Hi, my name is Matthew Meyers. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and hear what I have to say around personal decision-making strategies. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the strategies that are involved with the World Trade Center attacks that happened on 9/11. Within this video, I'm going to describe the leadership role that I'm going to be taking on, provide a breakdown of the decision-making processes that I took, assess additional factors that might affect this leadership role that I am embodying, outline my decision-making approach, hypothesize the implications that my plan may have on future problems or challenges that come up, and lastly, use theories from this course to support my plan. Within this video, I'm going to be taking on the role of Rudy Giuliani as he was the mayor of New York when this horrific attacks happened on the World Trade Center. And what I'm going to specifically be looking at is not what we could have done differently within that attack, but what we can do even more effectively as we move forward. And some of that also embodies some of the different things that we did well during that attack. And I think that it's very important as we look at making decisions for the organization, and in this instance for the state, to also take a look and see what we did well so that we don't try to change everything just to change it. This was one of the most horrific attacks on the United States soil ever. And unfortunately, thousands of individuals died as a result of these terrorist attacks that happened on the World Trade Centers when two airplanes flew into the buildings and made them crumble and crash. Within this time frame, we had a number of different responses from individuals. We also had responses from emergency response teams. And much of what we're going to be talking about today is not so much some of the different components that we could have done for the individuals, because I think we actually did a lot of that really well. But what we failed miserably is what we did for our emergency response teams and to help set them up for success moving forward. To look at this, one of the different models that I'm going to be utilizing from a decision-making standpoint, if you can see this here, is the decision-making process as it looks at from a holistic approach on starting from gathering facts. And that's where we're going to start here today. I mentioned that I believe that we did a lot of things well during these attacks, and what that really hinged on is the contingency plans that we had throughout the state of New York during this period of time. And what that meant is that we didn't have necessarily plans for attacks from a terrorist standpoint to this magnitude. We had plans for if the city got flooded and we had to get people out really quickly on how we can utilize some of those same type of factors, as well as getting people in. Like I said, many different agencies, many different people came in to help the state of New York during this period of time as well. And so we were able to use some of these different plans, and that is one of the biggest lessons that I want to make sure that we move forward with and take with us is contingency plans. And really what I think that we could do, just to bounce ahead just a pinch, is look at what other plans we have for major catastrophes, be it floods, be it fires or other kinds of attacks, and look at whatever plans we have in place to start to map out where some of those might also play a factor. But we'll loop back around to that, but I wanted to mention it now while I was thinking about it. But as I look here at the decision-making process, starting there again, gathering facts, we've got what we did well. Where we failed miserably is with our emergency response teams to set them up for success. And I'm not speaking, though I really would like to look and see what we can do to avoid so many different emergency response lives lost in these type of situations. I don't know what we could have done a lot differently than what we did there. I think that there's a couple things. But what we really failed with is what happened after these attacks. What happened when these men and women went back to their homes after dealing with this enormous catastrophe? Well, we dropped the ball. We didn't have people set up for groups and support groups and mental health support and some of these different components, because what you'll see from a statistical standpoint is thousands of individuals are now struggling with PTSD because of what happened to them from an emergency response perspective and the lack of follow through that helped them be successful moving forward. That is a big one, and that's what we're going to focus on today. We don't have a lot of time, so I think that just focusing on that one thing is going to be really beneficial for us. Brainstorming, though, as well. one thing that we looked at with this video is what are some of the different components, outside influences that are going to come in here and really challenge what we're trying to do? Because what we also saw from this attack was it wasn't just New York. We didn't have just New York first responders. We had outside agencies coming in. We had the FBI. We had the United States there. The president was involved. And when you start to involve all of those different components, boy, there's a lot of other components from a decision-making standpoint that are hard to make because we're not making it in a vacuum anymore. Now we're making it with all these other groups. So we need to brainstorm. We need to look at this. And I think that one of the biggest models that we can look at here is the collaboration approach, right? Because we have to figure out what's going to be necessary for one group over another group and looking and seeing where these things all come together. And I think that that really plays part within the brainstorming component there as well. And within that, we need to look at what the pros and cons are. There's not going to be across the board wins, and that's what happens with collaboration sometimes. Sometimes there's going to be losers in different pockets, but the goal of the collaboration approach is to make sure that there are less losers, if you will, to find that success line as well. And then we need to make a decision. The best thing I can do, and what we did well in the past, was involving decision making with other agencies as well as myself in New York. And then we need to follow through with those decisions that we make. Like I said, looping back in just one example from here is when we need to follow through, we need to have people on site, ready to go, supporting people, connecting them immediately. Not a nice to have, a necessary, a need to have, because suicides are up, post-traumatic stress is up, all of these different emotions are up because that follow through wasn't there. And again, that's just one example of what we could have done to follow through with that. And then define and clarify. We need to define and clarify what's working, what's not working, and then move forward, continuously looking at this approach and making mindful decisions with it there as well. All right. And with this, one thing that we have to look at and be very cautious of as we're going through this process is the biases emanating from availability heuristic. We were on edge as a nation. We were extremely on edge from New York. I mean, this is the edge, and the threat is always there for us. So what I need to make sure is that my biases are not being, my decisions aren't being impacted by the biases that I naturally have just based off the availability of information that is at my fingertips there. That's going to be critical for me to understand. And within that, my rationale from a decision-making standpoint as well. Information on alternatives can be gathered and quantified. The decision is important. I'm trying to maximize the outcome, and that's where I really want to make that rational decision, rational choice, looking then as well as really defining what the problems are. What are those specific problems that we're looking at? Am I identifying the root cause? If I'm basing this off of emotion, I need to make sure that I am being very accurate, specific, and looking at not attacking the symptoms. The symptoms are PTSD. The symptoms are loss of lives. The symptoms are financial impacts. The symptoms are all these things. I need to get down to it of what the issues are, what the impact is, and again, one of those true root causes is not having mental health support in place. And going through this here as well, listing out possible solutions, identifying best possible solutions, implementing that within the proper time frame, and analyzing the results. The analysis of this is going to be critical for us so that we're not just making the decisions again in a box. We need to make sure that they're hitting home and they're being very successful. Moving past symptoms, I talked about that, and then collaborating is often viewed as a win-win solution in the conflict. And that's why I really want to focus on that. We can do these things. We have to consider all things involved. One of the really kind of components as I was doing some research with this that stood out to me as well is people are on edge. There is an emotional attachment to this that people are thinking about as we're making that, and that can cloud our judgment. That can cloud our impact, and we need to make sure that ethics are in the forefront of what we're doing. I'm not saying I know the answer to this that I'm about to pose here, but we need to consider it. In 2002, the Attorney General approved use of several enhanced interrogation methods that included many physical restraints, torturous acts from a person, objects, insects, And when you look at that, is it ethical? Is that the route that we want to take? Is that what we want to do to get to where we're going to? Well, I don't want to make that decision on my own. I want to continue to look at other groups. I want to continue to hear the different voices that are out there. And I want to ensure that we are making great decisions, because we have an economy to think about. We have our livelihood to think about. And we have a connectedness here in New York City that I want to make sure that we are not having a ripple effect based off of what we do, because there's a lot of people that aren't happy with New York right now. It's tied to some of the different things that are happening from a United States perspective. But we need to make sure that what we're doing moving forward is taking all of these different components into consideration, hitting those root causes, and making sure that the American people are taken care of, they're supported, and they know that if something like this happens again, that the last thing they have to worry about is how their government responds to it, and feel at ease knowing that it's going to be taken care of. Thank you again for taking the time to watch this video, hearing some of the different ideas and thoughts that I had as far as getting to stronger conclusions moving forward, and I really look forward to your feedback. Thank you.